Jessica, can you hear us? So what are we doing? She's gonna join. She's on mute. She's good. Okay. I saw. Rory, am I good? Okay. Are we all good? Everybody in the room is good? Jessica, you're good? Yeah. She's probably delayed. We'll just keep it going? Okay. Welcome, everybody, to the regular Truckee Town Council meeting. It is October 27th, excuse me. And Judy, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Councilmember Commendatory.
Present.
Vice Mayor Klostad.
Here.
Mayor Polivy.
Here.
Councilmember Abrams.
Here on Zoom.
Thank you. Councilmember Turman.
Here.
Thank you.
And let's all rise and let's have our new town manager, Jennifer, lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God.
With liberty and justice for all. That was your first official duty. Congratulations. Thank you. And we will move on to public comment. Any public comment not on tonight's agenda, you can please state your name for the record. You can call or text in to 530-428-6555. You have 3 minutes if you choose to do that. Do we have any general public comment this evening? Judy. Okay. Sounds good. Closing public comment. We have 1, 2, 3. We have 4 presentations this evening, and I'm going to start with the first one. So it's my very proud pleasure to introduce everybody to Jennifer Calloway, our new town manager. And after an extensive recruitment process, over 130 applicants, we are excited to have narrowed it down and be led for the next 5 years by Jennifer. So welcome. Thank you. Ms. Calloway has a bachelor's degree in accounting from the State University of New York at Geneseo, a master's of public administration from Syracuse, and a law degree also from Syracuse. She has over 18 years of experience in local government and success with a number of agencies, including executive positions with the City of Sonora, Town of Los Gatos, and most recently as not just the finance director, but also the acting public works director and public information officer for the City of Morro Bay. Ms. Calloway's passion lies with small communities. She's excited to get to know all of the residents and business owners here and foster long-lasting relationships based on transparency and collaboration. Let me add a few other things. Ms. Calloway enjoys biking, hiking, paddleboarding, and of course skiing and snowshoeing, so you will fit in quite well. And it's really an honor to be able to introduce you. It's been a great process to get to know you up until your start date just yesterday. So a very warm welcome from us here on council and from the rest of the community, and we look forward to working with you over the next few years. Anything you can, yes.
Wait for the red light come on. No?
Nobody gave her a tech lesson before this? Jeez. We sabotaged you with the bad mic. There we go. We heard something work.
Okay, I just want to say thank you very much. Day 2, the staff has been wonderful. I've had a chance to meet the town team and really looking forward to getting out in the community and meeting everybody. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And we have lots of meetings and lots of hard work ahead, so it's going to be great. And with that, we'll hand over our next introduction to Judy Price.
We're going to swear her in first.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, thank you. We discussed that, didn't we? We're going to do a swearing in of our new town manager, Jen Calloway. Now it's official, so there's no more backing out.
Okay.
And I'm going to have you raise your right hand and repeat after me. Some of you are going to recognize this at least slightly because you saw a judge do this, what, yesterday?
Last night.
So I, in your name, do solemnly swear
I, Jennifer Calloway, do solemnly swear
to support and defend
to support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic.
foreign and domestic.
I bear true faith and allegiance
I bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California.
and the Constitution of the State of California.
I take this obligation freely
I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental
or
reservation
purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and I will well and faithfully discharge
and I will well and faithfully
the
discharge
duties upon which I'm about to enter.
the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. And you are up next with our next staff introduction.
Thank you, Mayor Pallavi. This one comes with a little less ceremony, but certainly not with a less enthusiasm. So we'd like to introduce Lynn Baumgartner today to council. She's been working for the town for a little over a week now, or 2 weeks now. And she comes to us from a couple of local agencies. I think she worked for Mountain Area Preservation as well as for the Sierra Nevada Alliance, which she now serves on the board for, which is really nice. She's also very similar and loves the community to snowboarding and mountain biking, swimming, hiking, reading, that type of thing. She has earned her master's degree in environmental science and management from the Bren School at US Santa Barbara, and her studying environmental health and safety practices in nanomaterial industry. So pretty minute kind of stuff we're looking at. Right down to the basics. So she's been in the Truckee area since 2010. So far, she really has hit the ground running since my staff. We're down 50% now in my team. So she's really picking up the pace quickly. So, and I really appreciate it. And I understand the mayor might know her as well.
Just wanted to also give Lynn a warm welcome as well. Thanks for joining the town team. Lynn and I have worked together for a number of years at some of her previous jobs, and even most recently, Lynn was helping out with the Measure K campaign as well. So thanks for all your help there, and a very warm welcome to you too, Lynn. And yes, Judy's department definitely needs you, so way to step up. Thank you.
We did receive some public comment on items not on the agenda. There's a text from Matt Miller. If you'll
Items that you want
indulge
to go
me.
back to public comment?
If you'll indulge me, yeah.
Yep, of course.
Sure. Public comment for October 27th. The two outdoor outhouses they built on the patio of 1882 restaurant look really nice. And when you drive by Rockway Road towards downtown, Matt Miller. So.
Thanks, Matt. We agree. And we look forward to them being able to open that porch in the near future, probably before winter, it looks like, with the rate they're going. Public comment is now officially closed, and we won't be going backwards. Depending on how many comments and questions, we might split up some of these presentations. I know on 5.3 we have a couple of public comments, so I do think just for council's sake, if we have any questions, we'll at least take 5.2 and 5.3 independently, so you can just look forward if you have any questions on those. With that, I will hand it over to Devery for the next presentation. on the parking management study. Thank you, Dev.
Good evening. So I'd like to go ahead and introduce you guys to Julie Dixon and Catherine Edgerly. They are from Dixon Resources Unlimited. They were our outside, our third-party vendor that helped us with as a consultant for our parking strategy plan, and they are actually going to zoom in and they're going to give their final presentation to us. And this is just an update for you with our completed parking plan. There isn't any action items at this time.
Great. If it's okay then and everybody can hear me, this is Julie Dixon, and I'm hoping everybody can see my slides. And Jessica, only because I can see you, would you mind to give me a thumbs up that you can see my slides? Thank you so much. So we're happy to be here today. We were anticipating coming and seeing you in really early April, and obviously COVID threw a big curveball in all of this. I want to caveat this too, as we talk about the final recommendations. There are some items in here that I'll obviously put an asterisk mark on, considering the COVID impacts. And so I definitely want to ensure and just again tell the council and also to the community is that we understand the impacts of COVID, and the approach that we took when the study was completed was in a pre-COVID era. And so there's some things here as we talk about these moving forward that I will absolutely be sure to acknowledge. And okay, now the slides are going. There we go. So just to refamiliarize yourselves, as we did come to council late last year and talked a little bit about Dixon Resources and the parking action plan, the intent here was to really design out an implementation guideline for near-term, mid-term, and long-term plans for parking-related decisions. And we have worked with communities all throughout the state of California and Nevada, for that matter, too, and actually all across the region. I wanted to just really be forward about the COVID-19 impacts. I've actually kept a close eye on your cams in the downtown area and have been able to witness some of the utilization of the parklets, again, consistent with other communities. We also wanted to highlight the fact that the routine sanitation of the pay stations has been something that's been ongoing, but very excited to see that you all have obviously proactively tackled the use of outdoor dining programs, and really talking about the fact that the waiving of the fees associated with those parking spaces for the businesses, and being able to consider extending that program into the winter season. Obviously, being in a winter location like you all, there'll have to be some consideration for what some of those configurations may require. But when we talk about those parking impacts, we've identified that locations like yours have obviously been impacted, as have the entire Tahoe Basin, with the fact that you are driving distance. So we still have a lot of folks still coming and impacting your locations. So parking demand does continue to be a challenge. And given that we've identified parklets and given up some of those parking spaces, the one advantage that we have is that with the Railyard lot and the locations down there is that there are some opportunities where we can continue to park those vehicles. Just as a review of the parking action plan project, we did leverage the pre-existing parking studies. And we also did data collection last year, if you'll remember, during the summertime and into the fall season, so that we could get some peak and off-peak data, as well as that engagement that included business owners and stakeholders within the city, within the town and outside within the downtown community as well. And the focus on the parking priorities being customer service, wanting to be sure that we emphasize that customer experience to make parking easy, accessible, and convenient to be a priority of all of these solutions, looking at opportunities that we can optimize on technology and ways that we can maximize the inventory wherever possible, and most importantly, making sure that it's a sustainable program, one that pays for itself. And that's something that we'll dig into as we talk about some of the rates and potential considerations for the town as we move forward. And also importantly, mobility. I mean, one of the things that we witnessed during our time in Truckee was the use of bicycles and walking and hiking and being able to leverage those resources even further as we talk about mobility management in Truckee. When we did look at the current rates, this was a summary of the rate structures that exist today throughout the downtown area. And when we talked about parking management demand, especially in the pre-COVID era, there were opportunities to implement and expand the mobile payment program. This is something that I would say, especially in light of the COVID environment, anything that we can do to promote a contactless experience is something that is encouraged. Being able to utilize and transition our pay stations into a pay-by-plate configuration where your license plate becomes your parking permit rather than relying upon a pay and display on your windshield or on your dashboard. Also, the opportunity to leverage the existing parking technology that you have and being able to use it for data. One of the things that's important when we talk about data collection and ongoing assessment, we want to be sure that the town is in a position to make data-driven decisions. So that rather than relying upon perception or ideas of how parking is impacted, we want to rely upon the data associated with parking occupancy, and that can relate to potentially adjusting the hours of operation as well as the parking rates. And one of the things that we were talking about last year at this time really talked about being able to leverage a valet parking program that could potentially be used during your peak winter months, as well as during some of your spring and summer events. This was, again, pre-COVID, but the proposal for demand rates of where you could consider basically adjusting your paid parking rates. And again, this is something too, we just got off of a webinar presentation with the city of Paso Robles, which I think that there was a lot of similarities between the usage of your two communities. And one of the things that they've gotten into is a demand rate style customer service model where the rate escalates based on people occupying or staying in the parking spaces for longer periods of time. One of the things that was also important from the stakeholders was considering off-peak rates, so as to really encourage our community members and residents to come and visit the downtown area too. And so when we look at these different rate models, something that's also really important when you look at the chart on the bottom is really taking advantage of those off-street lot locations, especially in the Railyard, where you can promote cheap, affordable parking, in some cases free rates, to encourage people to park in those more perimeter locations and getting them out of the core. And right now that's even more essential given the fact that we're utilizing so many spaces for the parklets. When we talk about permit parking, we do have a parking permit program today, but to be able to expand and leverage that permit program, we think can be advantageous, especially when we talk about our downtown employees. And a couple of ideas that come along with that is to leverage an automated parking permit program that could be incorporated into downtown residents as well as downtown employees. And it allows people to utilize an online tool to be able to manage their permit programs. Being able to expand the employee parking permit program as well is something that we think is really important throughout Truckee. And another feature of that that's really important is to consider a low income, or what we like to call a service worker permit, that basically allows for a very affordable parking permit for those that are maybe making closer to minimum wage so that they can really afford to work within Truckee. Pre-COVID, we would have been really pushing the carpooling permit program for downtown employees. I will say that there is some resistance for folks sharing carpools, but this is something that we're hoping as we get through the COVID recovery time, that this will be something that could be adapted. And there's opportunities with a carpooling program where you could actually offer free parking permits for those that participate in programs like that. The real key is to continue monitoring and utilizing data so that when we talk about the permit supply and what the pricing for those permits should be, similar to the on and off street rates, it should be managed based upon demand and based upon occupancy. Another thing that came up was being able to consider, especially during events, was remote employee parking that could be supported by a shuttle or potentially from TART or from any of the transportation options that we have throughout the region. This was something that was particularly important in Truckee, which was shared parking agreements. We recognize that through conversations that some of these had been discussed previous, but there have been a lot of advancements in shared parking agreements, especially when it comes to insurance and indemnification requirements, where being able to leverage some of the potential locations and being able to establish these release of liabilities, especially when it comes to permit parking. This is something that we think would be a real benefit to the town without having to build new parking infrastructure, or if there's any impacts in any of the development over in the Railyard area. Now, this is something that a lot of folks don't like to talk about when we talk about enforcement. I prefer to talk about compliance because we want people to follow the rules. But what's really important is that we need to have consistent compliance, which means that currently we only have one full-time person that's supporting the parking enforcement program, and we don't necessarily have that 7 days a week. And so we really want to encourage the town to consider boosting up those resources. And one of the things that's important is we're not talking about going out there and writing a bunch of parking citations. It's about education, it's about information, and it's about people following the rules. And with that, there's the opportunity to utilize warning notices and other educational tools that really, again, improve the customer experience. And on that webinar that I just mentioned that we just got off, Paso Robles shared a story where they did a 6-week target study in February, where they demonstrated through boosting their compliance resources, they actually had a substantial increase in paid parking revenue because of that consistency. But some of the recommendations that also go along with compliance is the fact that the city does need to consider new citation management technology. The technology that you're using today is rather dated, and there's opportunities to, again, use more effective online efficient tools that can really provide some of those benefits like warning notices and being able to really push positive messaging to potential violators. Again, increasing the enforcement staff is something that we think even can be done seasonally to ensure that we have that consistency in the field. And the opportunity to leverage license plate recognition technology is something that is very much advantageous and can be incorporated into the citation management technology as well. And again, the arrow in the bottom right-hand corner is just an example of what's considered a customer service tool for immobilization, so that rather than towing vehicles, the ability to use things like windshield immobilization devices that have self-release codes on there can be opportunistic to again have a positive customer service experience for our visitors. Just regarding the pay stations, the importance for the maintenance and upkeep to continue, the opportunity to upgrade the infrastructure that you have today that will allow for the conversion to pay-by-plate technology is something that is not cost prohibitive. And then just again, making sure that the upkeep and maintenance of not only the infrastructure, but also the upkeep and maintenance of the parking lots is something that's so important. Special events, I know we're probably not talking a lot about special events in this current era, but it is something that obviously impacts Truckee during normal times. And so there's a couple of things we want to make sure is on your radar, which could include fees associated with the parking spaces that are occupied for specific events, considering what the rates should be for parking during special events, especially considering when there's alternative transportation's option, especially when transit is tied in, potentially increasing paid parking rates to discourage people from driving and rather to take advantage of alternative modes of transportation and really being able to promote and utilize those. Loading zones is something that also came up from the stakeholders as well, was really ensuring that that loading zone enforcement is maintained and managed and ensuring that it's used only for short-term use. And speaking with the police department, understanding that you, like other communities, incorporated short-term parking spaces throughout the COVID era, I would encourage you to consider continuing the utilization of those short-term spaces, because when you think about the return of rideshare, TNC type companies, being able to have those short-term spaces for not only them to pick up and drop off, but also, you know, when I'm coming into the downtown and maybe unloading my family in that short-term space while I go and park remotely, or letting, you know, my grandparents exit the vehicle in a convenient space in the downtown before I go drive off, you know, to the perimeter parking locations. And then something else that came up significantly was the consideration and enforcement of commercial loading before 10 a.m. I understand that there are one-offs where that may not necessarily be possible, but as much buy-in as we can get from our merchants and our restaurateurs that could support that before 10 a.m. requirement is something that we know can be very impactful during your peak periods of time. When we talk about electric vehicle charging and knowing that this is only likely to expand, the opportunity to start to charge a public parking rate in those EV stations is something that other communities are doing, especially as EV use expands. That's something we want to make sure is on your radar. And then when we talk about the Railyard, really considering increasing the parking in lieu of fees so that we are talking about that sustainable model moving forward. Recognizing that parking is often an incentive to motivate development, but this is something, especially when we talk about the impact in your downtown, we want to make sure that that's not overlooked. And really looking for opportunities for new parking lots or garages within that development area, and considering public-private partnerships when developing a parking garage in the Railyard area. We want to just make sure that that is on your radar. And this is something that we think is really important in some of the messaging that we receive from your stakeholders, is when we talk about establishing a new town parking brand, something to really be sure that it's really crystal clear so that when you do have visitors coming into the community, they understand where they want to go. In general, people want to follow the rules. They just need to know where we want them to park. And so being able to leverage static wayfinding and being able to potentially incorporate occupancy counting technology is something that we think will be really important for Truckee. On the right side of the screen, and I think I shared this the last time we talked to you all, was some examples of what Park City, Utah leveraged for some of their design, really creating some uniformity and consistency. In fact, we actually took a lot of signage down as a result of the consolidated signage that you see there on the far right side. And we think there's some real opportunities in Truckee to do the same. And then when we talk about transportation demand management, I really want to reinforce the fact that this is not just about parking, but about mobility. And we really want to make sure that we're leveraging existing programs, but also thinking about the opportunities, especially in a community like yours. When we talk about micro shuttles, on the bottom of the screen, you'll see an example of what they call that FRED. It's Free Ride Everywhere downtown in San Diego. And it's become very popular and prominent in communities just like yours all throughout the country. I was just in a community last week in Texas that they've actually purchased their own micro shuttle and manage it internally. And there's companies that can do that for you as well. And this is something that becomes an on-demand or a fixed route schedule that we think could be very advantageous, moving folks up and down the corridor of the downtown. And the last couple of slides here that I just really want to reinforce is that anything about parking, anything about mobility, it's so important that we talk about education and outreach. I already mentioned the branding, I already mentioned the signage, but whatever we do as a community, we want to make sure that we're informing people. We want to make sure that we're transparent. And we want to make sure people understand the rules. We want them to follow, we want them to comply, but they also need to understand. And this is just a quick recap of some of the things that Paso Robles has done in their program to really get that outreach out there, to really be sure to inform the public so that they understand what the rules are. And with that, that is our presentation. Thank you for letting us present. I will stop sharing my screen and see if there's any questions.
Thank you so much, Julie. That was really informative and a great update. Do you have anything, did you want to add anything, Dev? Well, I guess what are the next steps would be great.
Yeah, and I'll explain kind of what we've done too with COVID happening, and it kind of changed, obviously, the dynamics of where our mindset was shifting to. So we did do some citation management system demos earlier this year. We demoed with 3 that we did really like. Like Julie said, we do have a permitting system. It could be better and easier for the end user. So we're looking at systems that already are doing that, where they do license plate recognition, and you register your car with the license plate, and it can be multiple people. So say I have 2 cars, or my husband and I, trade off, but I work downtown, I could register both those vehicles with an employee parking permit. And so we're looking at that. And then with license plate readers, the LPRs, there's both fixed and mobile, and those would be an excellent tool for us because we only have one full-time parking aide, and it just makes it quicker to kind of, you can literally drive through zones and collect all that information instead of kind of walking, going car by car to see where they are with, have they paid, have they not. I actually just spoke to Calais today. That's our vendor for our parking meters, and they also, Dixon Unlimited Resources helped us set up our first zone, which was Zone 100, which is in the Railyard, as a pilot program for the Way to Park app. I talked to Calais today, and we're going to rename that Railyard because it makes more sense in my head that's the Railyard parking lot, and then we're going to create zones for the rest of the district, so it can be that touch-free way to park. You use your app to pay. It also will let you know if you're running out of time, and you don't have to run back to your car or to a meter. You can do it from the restaurant that you're sitting at, or you can keep shopping, and you don't have to worry about possibly walking all the way to the end of downtown. So that is in the works. We're hoping to get that dialed soon. And then, as Julie mentioned, with COVID, we have not been asking businesses to pay for those spaces that they are utilizing for their outdoor dining.
You have or have not?
Have not.
Have not. I didn't think so, but just checking. Great. Thank you. That was really informative. Any council questions or comments? And maybe we'll start with Jessica if you have anything you want to add. Jessica might be.
It's really interesting, exciting, and I'm curious to see as we progress, but nothing additional to add and no questions right now. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you. Tony? No? Vice Mayor Klofstad?
So this was great, and I know we've got irons in the fire for other potential parking areas, parking lots, possibly shared parking. Do we have a master plan showing all of these and kind of what phases they're coming in?
Probably the earliest one, and Dan can answer this too, is our West River revision or redevelopment of West River Street, and that we're working with Bud Haley on that to see if we can create more parking and how that looks with that streetscape. But that's the most near future project, Dan?
Yep.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you, Julie and Devery, for the presentation. It really underscores that parking can be very complex, and there are a lot of things to consider. So appreciate that, and I'm glad there wasn't a test after your presentation. So.
I just have one quick question, and that's, is there like a value per parking spot in the different corridors that we see in terms of a revenue, like an annual revenue per parking spot per district?
Our Jack Steiner and the fire station lot are our highest producing revenue lots for us. I did run the numbers just to kind of give you an overall perception of where we are year over year, just to give some correlation. So last year, from January 1st to the end of October, we had roughly $693,000 in revenue. And this year we have $489,000 in revenue. And then I wanted to break it down a little further just to give it there's 9 meters that have been affected as far as with the outdoor dining. And so, we have limited spaces now on that downtown main commercial row strip. And so for last year, same time frame, January through the end of October, in those 9 meters, we had $195,000 coming in revenue. And this year we have $102,000 in revenue.
And have you gone that far as to break down like the revenue per spot?
I have not. I have it by meter,
Okay.
but I could send that.
I only bring that up because I know, especially as some of the businesses are starting, as we're transitioning into this winter wonderland model and then potentially beyond, I know that there's a couple of projects or businesses sort of waiting in the wings as to what they may or may not want to do permanently, I think, and looking at opportunities like that. And so starting to have that conversation, or at least for us to have the ability to understand what kind of revenue is generated per spot. So if those applications do come in, we can start to look at what kind of value that might offset, specifically if businesses are either interested in pulling spaces out or potentially even putting some in.
And we can definitely do that. It will be an average of all those spaces across the front, because we do pay by, it's not per space, but it's by meter, but we can do that.
I don't need to know what space 22 generates.
You never know.
Yeah, it's all good. Just as a comment, I think just something to look forward to as we move that on. And then the only thing I didn't see in Julie's presentation was the season pass idea for parking. So I'll still stick to that one as something I think, I'm not sure how much 50 cents is going to make a difference in an off-peak season for somebody to come down and park downtown. But I think, either some free days like what we were talking about, I feel like last time we had this presentation, or other ways to really, I just don't think 50 cents is going to do it, right? Like, it's either free or...
There's definitely a lot of options that we have that we can play with, as far as like how our tier structure works, or how, off-season, peak, non-peak. And like Julie mentioned too, is we get into vendors that have smarter programs. You can increase rates based on occupancy, where it does push into other lots that are less vacant, or more vacant. And we could definitely play around with some options for seasonal.
Cool.
And Deborah, if I could just reinforce, your expansion of the Way to Park program is going to be really beneficial, and it's something that you can push messages to your community for that parking pass idea, or for different benefits that you can offer when it comes to free days or whatever that may be. And that could be zip code driven too. So there's a lot of value that you'll get out of that Way to Park expansion, and being able to really do some community pushes when it comes to parking benefits as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. That's really interesting. So yeah, great job. Thank you. Any other comments from up here? No? Any public comment on item 5.2, Judy? No public comment on 5.2. Great. Thanks, Julie. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks,
and we look
Catherine.
forward to seeing you again. And thanks, Dev, very much as well. Mr. Morris, item 5.3, 5G telecommunications services in Truckee. Take it away.
Thank you. And I'd like to start by providing some context for this item. The town has gotten a lot of questions from members of the community about 5G wireless technology, and a lot of people have expressed concerns about that. And I'd like to explain what this item is and what this item is not. The council is not being asked to make any decisions tonight. The council is not being asked tonight, and the council is not going to be asked whether or not to allow 5G technology in Truckee. As I will explain, the law does not give us that choice. If the wireless carriers want to roll that out, there's not much we can do about it. Not nothing, but just not much. So the council's not being asked to decide tonight, are we going to have 5G or not? And I would also I have to emphasize this, I'm not telling anyone, as I explain what the law says, I'm not telling anyone what to believe or what not to believe. If people are concerned about 5G, I'm not telling them not to believe that. I'm not dismissing anyone's concerns. I'm not saying this is not an important issue. I'm only discussing tonight what the law does and does not allow us to do. And there are some pretty significant constraints. So most of the time, the things that we deal with at the town involve state laws. But telecommunication services is one of the things where it's predominantly regulated by federal law. So Congress makes federal laws, and then the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, is allowed to adopt regulations. And the combination of federal telecoms law and FCC regulations really provide most of the restrictions on what we can and cannot do about regulating 5G and other wireless technologies. So the things that I'm going to talk about primarily are federal law. I will note a couple of them that are state law. So what federal law says is that local control over wireless facilities is okay if and then there's a lot of conditions to the if. So the biggest one that may be of interest to the community is that cities and counties and states are specifically prohibited from regulating wireless facilities based on health concerns. All the law allows cities and counties and states to do is to make sure that facilities meet some very old, circa 1996, FCC standards. So if they meet those 1996 FCC radiation standards, RF standards, that's all we can do. We can't require them to meet tougher standards. We can't turn down facility applications based on fears that facilities using those standards might harm people. We're simply not allowed to do that. It's a little bit unusual that the law says that we're not allowed to consider something, but this is one of the cases where that happens. So again, we are simply not allowed to turn down facilities based on health concerns. All we can do is make sure they follow these old standards. We also cannot prohibit the provision of wireless services. And that's been kind of litigated a lot. And what it now is thought to mean is that not only can we not simply say no, we cannot tell a carrier that they're not allowed to fill in a gap in their coverage. So if a carrier comes to the town and says, I want to put up a new tower, whether it's 5G or not, and they say, we absolutely have to have this. We've looked at other sites. We've looked at other ways of filling in this gap. And this is really the only way to fill in the gap. We kind of have to let them. The other thing is we can't discriminate among different providers of functionally equivalent services. And that's been interpreted to mean that we can't express a preference for one technology over another. Simply not allowed to do that. We also, sometimes people who have concerns about these things will say, well, why don't you just sit on the applications? Just don't act on them. Well, the FCC caught on to that, and so now we have time limits in which we have to act on any applications, whether it's 5G or other wireless telecoms. We only get 90 days if they're going to put it up on an existing tower, and we get 150 days if it's an entirely new facility, but we can't just sit on them forever. And California, a couple years ago, with I think it was AB 57, now allows carriers to decide that, well, if we haven't gotten back to them, that their application's deemed approved. And all they have to do is notify us that, hey, you missed the deadline, so that means that you approved our application. Then also, if we do somehow manage to navigate through that thicket of restrictions and we want to deny an application, we can't just deny it based on nothing. It has to be based on what's called substantial evidence. It has to be written down. It has to be in the record. And it has to be something that we've communicated to the applicant, and it has to be something that a court can look at. So again, if we do want to say no to something, it has to be based on evidence that isn't health related, isn't expressing a preference for one technology over another, et cetera, et cetera. Then the FCC 2 years ago felt that that some cities were getting in the way of 5G and other wireless rollouts by adopting moratoria, because state law allows the town council to adopt sort of temporary bans on various things. And now, under a 2018 FCC order, we're not allowed to do that. So cities cannot adopt official moratoria, and cities also cannot adopt unofficial moratoria that would sort of mean, yeah, we're just not going to process this, or we have an unofficial policy of not allowing these things. So now we're not allowed to do that either. Then, because of a change in the law, it now says that we can't deny and must approve, which sounds a lot like the same thing, but it's written that way in the law. We cannot deny and must approve applications to make changes to existing facilities. So if there's an existing tower out there and a carrier comes in and says, I want to upgrade it to 5G, we can't say no to that, as long as the footprint of the facility isn't really changing. And we also have to approve that within 60 days. So again, we can't sit on that for very long either. And then finally, some people have said, well, if they want to put up facilities on property that a government entity owns, well, the government entity should be able to say no to that because it's your own property. Well, not so much. So now, because of a 2018 FCC order called the Small Cell Order, and by the way, that order was specifically aimed at making it very difficult to say no to 5G. The Small Cell Order makes it difficult for us to say no to installing 5G and other wireless things on our own facilities. So we don't do power here, but the PUD does, so they can't really say no on their power poles. We have a hard time saying no if someone wants to do 5G on our light poles. We're allowed to do a fairly limited kind of aesthetic regulation. City of San Francisco won a case on that a couple of years ago, 1 year ago. But you can't use that aesthetic regulation as a way of saying no. So if you have a historic district like we do, we would not be able to say we don't want any of this stuff in our historic district because it's ugly. We don't have that much latitude. Another idea that some people have come up with is, well, why don't you just make it too expensive for the carriers to install these things within the right of way by hiking your permit fees? Well, now we can't. So permit fees have to be based on costs. So we can't try to just scare them off by saying that we're going to charge them $10,000. We also can't sit on the applications. Again, there's a special shorter shot clock. That's what it's called for applications on things in the right of way. It's 60 days for co-locations on existing facilities, i.e., there's something up there already and they're going to make it different or bigger. It's 90 days for new structures. And then finally, this is an old one, but it's one that bears on this. California state law gives telephone companies a statutory right to use all of our rights of way. So we cannot say, yeah, we don't want telephone facilities in the rights of way, not allowed to do that. All we're allowed to do is regulate the time and the place and the manner that that phone companies use the right of way. So we can't tell them no entirely, but we can say, we don't want you to go right there because you can't put that box on the sidewalk because then we've got an ADA path of travel issue. So as you'll see, or as you may have been thinking as I've been going through this, there's a lot that we cannot do, and there's very, very little that we can do. I did take a look at all the public comment that we received today, because I want to understand people's concerns, and Dr. Mackey in particular had some really specific ideas, and some of those are things we cannot do. Her public comment in particular pointed at something that Marin County did, and so I took a look at the Marin County ordinance, and it doesn't actually keep 5G out, which is sort of how it was described. It just establishes a set of application protocols, and it establishes kind of a preference that, hey, it'd be great if you didn't put stuff here, but we know we can't keep you away from it. So that's the kind of thing that we can do, which is sort of window dressing, really. Anyway, so that's the end of my little presentation. I brought this to you simply because I know that some of you have been getting a lot of communications from concerned citizens. And again, I'm not dismissing those concerns. I'm not saying this is how the law should be. I'm just saying this is what the law is at the moment. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them. And of course, I think we do have some public comment on this.
Yeah, thanks very much, Andy. I think you're correct. This was directly a result of a lot of the public comment that a lot of us have been getting over the past couple of years. And it seemed like a really important issue that people wanted to sort of hear from, that we were kind of coming off with these one-time emails over and over and over again. So it's nice to be able to do this in a more consolidated fashion. I guess just the one question before we move on to the rest of council would just be, are there any further steps or next steps? What, if anything, would we be working towards other than a Marin-style set of regulations? Or it seems like, at least by the way that you laid it out, we're sort of at the mercy of all of this. So are there any other roads, to go down in terms of addressing some of the community's concerns around this? Well,
The biggest one is also the most difficult one, and Dr. Mackey did raise this in her email, and that is that we could lobby Congress to change the law. But I will say that, I've been practicing law for 20 years, and this whole time I've been working mostly for cities, and I've done a lot of telecommunications work. It's been one of my sort of hobbies, if you will, within this line of work. And so I've been watching this unfold for a long time, and the trend has been pretty consistently that every time the telecommunications industry thinks that it's too difficult, or that cities and counties and states are saying no, they go get the law changed. And the FCC in the last decade or so has been really, really willing to listen to the wireless companies and very unwilling to listen to cities and counties and people worried about public health and safety. So that is the ultimate thing that anyone who's concerned can try to do, is to lobby Congress and to try to get the FCC to listen. But it's a very, very heavy lift. because it would be trying to reverse a very long trend. Now, if the next Congress looks different than the current Congress, or if something changes, maybe Congress would be more willing to listen, but it's hard to say.
And we would probably want to build this into our legislative agenda if we decided as a group this was something that was important, so that we would be poised to act should something come up, and that would most likely be January or February of next year.
Yes, I would put it in the legislative platform, and I would again emphasize that because this is a big national issue, this is an area where our voice alone isn't going to do much. So if we really want to try to move the needle, we'd have to really try to build a coalition or join a coalition of like-minded cities or states.
Great. And does the League have they put out anything on any of this stuff?
The League is not actively doing much with this as far as I know. There is a group called NATOA, the National Association of Telecommunications Officers, and I don't remember what the A is. And there's a California chapter that does look at this kind of thing, but I'm not aware of a current really organized movement to try to get the laws changed.
Great. Thank you. Jessica, you kind of get the hot seat just so we don't forget about you over there on the screen. Any questions or comments?
No, I don't think so. Thank you.
Yeah.
Nothing. Nothing of. Sorry, I have a fire alarm or my smoke detector just started chirping in the background. I'm sorry if you hear that.
Luckily, we can't hear it, so it's all good.
Okay, good. So, nothing of substance to add. Thank you.
Yeah. Councilmember Commendatore.
No, I don't have any questions or comments except that thanks, Andy, for laying it out that way. It was actually pretty interesting and makes you feel kind of helpless in reality. It's kind of been one of my biggest complaints sitting up here about other things, such as codes and different things that are pushed down small jurisdictions' throats that we have to accept no matter what, because whether it be federal or state law forces it. So it'd be nice to be empowered, find ways to be empowered to give some local control back to us. So I'm not sure where that goes with that, but.
Yeah, I agree. It's pretty impactful, not in the way you would like it to be. I guess my only question is really, if we were to do a Marin style, essentially what we're doing is saying, hey, we would like you to be a good neighbor and play by our rules and accommodate our requests. And that's essentially what we would be able to do, but we would be able to define those.
Yeah, and the Marin ordinance, most of the teeth in it are really in application requirements, which doesn't change anything or limit anything. It just really provides information up front. And then a lot of the rest of it is sort of hopes or polite suggestions that are not really binding, but it is a way of communicating community preferences.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Andy. I wrote down, as you were talking, appeal to congressional delegation. It seemed like that was sort of the bottom line here if we're dealing with federal regulation. So you answered that question, and sounds like a pretty significant lobbying effort, community up to state to Congress and beyond, if any change is going to be affected. So
I do have one other question, if I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we understand this as a national issue, and it's coming directly from the FCC, Federal Communications Commission. That is what they do. What about other nations? How are they handling this situation? Do you have any information on that?
I don't have a good sense of that, to tell you the truth. I just don't know.
I really doubt that the United States is the only place that's concerned about this technology, so it would be interesting to know.
My only other question is, we've gotten a few requests to somehow be able to highlight these permits when they come through the planning department. And so people are, even though they can't do anything about it, and we can't approve nor deny, or we have to approve, or whatever it may be. But I didn't know if there was a way that you guys were considering either pulling those out. I know I've talked to Jenna a tiny bit we've gone back and forth a couple times, so that those permits are just either, there's a section on the planning website or something like that, just so people knew.
Yeah, for anything that has a land use application, those all go onto the map that Drew put together for us for current development, so people can track that themselves. What we haven't done is pulled building permits, but we could add those too.
And is there a way, so on that map, which I guess I haven't been to lately, can you search out like a wireless installation or permit specifically by, rather than, single family res, right? Is there a way to hone in any deeper or not really?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but if not, Drew can build that for sure.
Yeah, that might and it's just a suggestion. I'm not, if it's something fairly easy, he's pretty amazing, so he probably can do it pretty quickly, but, I'm not envisioning a big project on this one. But I know we've had that request in a lot of the same emails that have come through from some of the folks in the community, just so they're aware of where those are going in. Great. We do have public comment on this one, correct? Let's hear it.
Hi, my name is Lindsay Rojas, and I'd like to leave a comment for agenda item 5.3 regarding 5G telecommunications. I am requesting that Truckee pass a cease and desist resolution calling on wireless companies to stop any current and future build out of 4G and 5G small cell wireless antennas until such facilities are proven safe through independent research. Without studies proving safety and electromagnetic fields, EMF insurance, our residents are at grave risk. Children are particularly at increased risk to the damaging effects of EMFs. We need Truckee's town council members to speak up for them and protect them. I have submitted via email a breakdown of studies that are available showing various health risks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lindsay.
So I received a couple of text, comments. This is Katie, Truckee resident. I'm highly concerned about both the lack of proven safety data on 5G as well as the potential impacts on my property value. How do I stay informed about where small cell wireless facilities are being installed so I can make sure it's not in my neighborhood? It seems like we need a town requirement to check for the frequencies they say they're emitting, because independent testers are showing that these small cells are emitting much higher and potentially more harmful frequencies than they state. Very concerned citizen here sitting watching this with other concerned Truckee residents. Thank you. She added also, some cities across the U.S. are passing small cell installation in residential areas. Have paused small cell installations, in residential areas. We'd appreciate the investigation of how they're doing this. Americans have a responsible technology has been more informed, or more information. And then Tahoe Truckee Media would like to thank the town for the continuing support of free speech and community media.
For consent.
And that's Rory O'Farah.
That's probably for consent, I'm guessing. It's okay. Oh, got it. I was assuming it was for their contract renewal on consent, but that's okay. We like you anyway, Rory. It's all good, and thank you. We'll just play that again and appreciate you. Any more public comment on 5.3? Good. Okay. Closing 5.3, that was an informational-only presentation. If there's any follow-up action, we can talk about that at a future meeting. Thank you, Andy, very much for bringing that to us, and hope all the community was able to get a better picture, really, for sort of what's under our control and what's not. You also have 5.4. Real property negotiators.
Yes, agenda for tonight has a closed session item, and we were asked by the owner of the property that we'll be negotiating with to identify our negotiators. So the negotiators for the town will be Jen Calloway, Dan Wilkins, Kim Zurich, and myself, and we will be negotiating with any or all of Art Chapman, Grant Keeney, Chris Butcher, all from JMA Ventures, and or Mike Warda and or Dennis Buchanan, representing the Yorger family, who are the actual owners of the property. Thank you. That's all I have.
Great, thank you. With that, any other comments on any of the presentations that anybody would like to bring up from the dais? No? Jessica, you're good? Yep, awesome. Any other public comment? Nope, we covered that. So we will move on from presentations into our consent calendar. Thanks everybody for the presentations this evening. We have item 6.1, Jaboom Street Sidewalk Feasibility Study and Improvement Project, of which we got a late public comment in case anybody didn't see it at about 3:45, so check your email. Item 6.2, Mills Act Historic Preservation Contracts. 6.3, Agreement with TTUSD for the provision of educational and governmental television services. Item 6.4, Council Salary Increase. 6.5, Appointment of members to the Truckee Tax Measure Citizens Oversight Board. 6.6, Purchase of a compact tractor with snowblower attachment. And 6.7, the adoption of a Joint Powers Agreement and bylaws for California Intergovernmental Risk Authority. Any member of council like to pull anything from consent? No. No. Jessica, you're good? No. Any staff like to pull anything from consent? Great. Do we have any other public comment on consent other than very much, we will repeat that, we very much appreciate Tahoe Truckee TV's recording of all of the public meetings for the town of Truckee. So thank you. With that, Councilmember Tierman, can we have a motion to move our consent calendar?
Absolutely. I move that we approve the consent calendar.
I'll second it.
And all in favor?
Aye.
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 And any opposed? Consent carries. Thank you very much. Moving right along. Item 7.1, Town Council Health Insurance Benefits. Kim Zurich, all yours. Oh, you did make a fancy presentation.
Yes, well, you will be so impressed. It's this slide and this slide. So, yes, I prepared it. So let me go back. So this item is coming out of direction that the staff received in the council meeting in September, where the council approved the annual budget. And Councilmember Klostad had brought up the issue of possibly having council members receive health insurance. At that time, we said we didn't have data and we couldn't address it. So you all asked us to do some homework and bring this back to you. So that's what we're doing. I have prepared the staff report for your consideration. And really this evening, we're looking for direction to move this forward or not. Moving it forward would look like would be working with CalPERS, the health division of CalPERS, to create a resolution to modify the current agreement with CalPERS that currently does not allow elected officials to participate in the town's health insurance plan. And then you all have the opportunity to determine to what extent the town funds potential council members' participation in the plan. And I included some ideas of the cost related to that in the staff report. And I'm prepared to talk about other ideas and give you ballpark information if you'd like. And then the only other piece of information that I was unclear on, I believe, in the staff report, and I have clarified with CalPERS, to the extent you can get solid, never-changing answers with CalPERS, because that doesn't always happen, unfortunately, is that because council members do not participate in the retirement plan, there would be no opportunity for council members to participate in retiree health. That doesn't keep that doesn't affect the Government Accounting Standards Board requirement that we still accrue the way we do on our members for retiree medical. It's a little odd that way. But overall, that is precluded, the retirement portion of it. So happy to answer any questions or provide any additional clarity that I can. And there were some significant questions from council that were shared with you all. And then I think you're all aware there were public comment letters that we received that have been emailed to everybody throughout the day.
Great. Thank you. Can I ask one quick question? Then I'll hand it over to you guys just so, while we have her on the GSAB piece of it before it leaves my brain.
GASB.
Well, what is it called?
GASB.
GASB. That's
Governmental Accounting Standards Board.
So to clarify what you just said was the, whatever it is, the $100 or that part would still be a part of any type of monthly stipend regardless, but once a council member is done serving, there is no ongoing commitment of any kind that can be attached to any action or non-action that we take up here.
That is my understanding, yes. But I do want to clarify the first part that you said. Yeah. It's not part of it what we would call a stipend. It's simply the internal calculation of the cost of the insurance.
Right. And we wouldn't see that generally anyway. That would be a town liability. That's not correct. An individual's liability, and that liability is carried by the person or by the council member, right? So it's carried by the town, but it is affected by the council member's participation or not on an annual basis.
Yes, let me put it this, maybe I can clarify it better this way. So when we provide our town employees a X amount towards their health insurance. When we're calculating the cost of the health insurance, it's what we pay PERS plus the amount of the GASB accrual that we expect them to pay to the town to make up the delta between the town's contribution and the total cost.
Thank you.
It would be the same.
Some of us might be better educated on how these public options work. I was not, so I asked a lot of questions beforehand. Any questions from council before we go to public comment and deliberation? Council Member Tierman, and go ahead and yeah.
Okay, yeah. So we recently passed a budget for the coming year, and I think your staff report discussed the budget impact, and my understanding was about 90,000, maybe 100,000 ballpark. And the philosophy we've been operating under is that if we add something, something has to give, correct? So can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yes, so that has been our philosophy, because as we've been talking about in the last two budgets, we have what I've been calling kind of a structural problem with our revenues growing at a slower rate than our expenditures, which over the longer term is not a tenable situation. So we've talked about you add something, you need to take something out, particularly as it pertains to a long-term, year-over-year expenditure. That's different than a one-time expenditure. The amount I quoted, the 90,000, was for the highest possible level of benefit for 5 council members. That would be full family health insurance. So that to me was the top end. I did mention there was other opportunities to lower that cost, but my strong recommendation would be to still figure out a way to reduce another cost, because we are adding a long-term ongoing cost. And that's been our prudent budgeting philosophy.
And I don't know if it's helpful for all of us as we start to head through the questions, and I've sort of heard this before, but in order for us to get on the same page, I didn't know if it would be helpful now or wait for deliberation, but I'm not sure it was ever any of ours intention to go for full family health benefits for everybody, especially at that kind of price tag. So at the very least, working assumption, even seeing the staff report, was a more minimal stipend that would not carry that kind of $90,000 price tag. And I didn't know if we wanted to, if we can speak philosophically about this in total, or if we do want to get down a little bit deeper into the numbers, I would be very much in favor of just sort of getting rid of that whole scenario and moving into, if we're going to have a reasonable conversation about this, getting into an individual council member stipend during their term of service, no retirement anything, none of that extra stuff, somewhere in the line of, and I was going to suggest even lower than the 800, but at least starting with the second scenario that Kim presented us with, which was the $810 per month scenario, and just not even going to the whole full family thing. So that was just going to be my suggestion for how we talk about this, unless anybody wants to go any higher or lower. But that was just sort of a recommendation as we ask our questions and move through this agenda item. With that, any questions from this end? Councilmember Commendatore?
Yeah, well, one I'm not sure what you just said. Are we talking about philosophically, or are we asking questions?
We are asking questions. I was more saying I've already personally ruled out the 90,000, and so that's where my questions are going to focus on the stipend piece of it.
Gotcha.
That's all I was really saying. So if we were all like, yeah, full family for everybody, then we can go down that sort of hole. Right. But I was more just saying, hey, I'm ready to throw that one out if we're going to have this conversation. That's all I was really saying, to try to tighten it up a little bit.
Right. I do have questions. I'm not sure. I think some of my questions, Kim, would be kind of more towards we were presented with a number of cities who do participate in some sort of health insurance for their council members. One of the questions I would have, which I know we're not going to have, but I do think that maybe, I don't know if you have any inkling, would be what kind of fiscal responsibility are those towns and those cities running? Are they always on the edge of dealing with financial crisis, or are they very sound and have a strong financial backing and credit rating, such as the town of Truckee?
That's a great question, and as you said, I don't have that specific answer. That would be an interesting correlation to make. Some of the council benefits obviously have been maybe started with the city many years ago,
right?
And our town did not do that. So,
can you elaborate on why the town, from your perspective? Do you have any idea of why maybe previous town council members felt that? I'm putting you on the spot.
You really are.
I'm sorry.
I don't. Other than, I've had a few previous council members contact me for questions related to this, but didn't really necessarily delve into the philosophy that they had back in 1993.
Okay. I think David's question answered one of mine. I do have I don't mind having this discussion, but I do have a question as to, and maybe this is more philosophical, but why is it an agenda item for discussion at this level versus we haven't really ever had opportunity to really, this is a big change of philosophy, and have it maybe at a, at the retreat in January or something to that effect, to see where everybody was at before it got to this level. Was there, I don't know, that's something staff has an answer on, or someone on a dais, or?
Well, it could have been a miscommunication with staff, but we all felt that when that was brought up at the budget hearing, that when you all approved the final budget, that we perceived there was a general consensus on the dais that we should go and do some work and bring this back to you all. So we may have misunderstood that, but that's how we as a team perceived that instruction.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to I guess expand on that a little further, there was some specific dialogue about the current council considering this topic at the budget workshop to a specific dialogue and suggestions that this town council, as opposed to the incoming town council in a couple of months, consider this topic. So that's the other reason it's in front of you, instead of being deferred until the next town council's here.
Well, that makes sense, and I remember that workshop. All right, my last question, which I don't know if you're going to want to answer, or anyone wants to answer on town staff, but I'm trying to get this is from our perspective, but you guys have been working in this town and been professionals here for quite a long time. What is the town staff's perspective on something like this? So I don't know if you want to answer that question.
I'd say that it's a matter of council policy. I mean, this is kind of this is a tough one. From 1993 to 2016, the council compensation was $300 per month. In 2016, the council took an action to increase that to around $650 a month. You just bump that up again to account for inflation. And then, the item in front of you is to consider adding health insurance to the council compensation package. I think it's a philosophical question for the council to think about as to, what level of value do you think is appropriate to put on, or what level of compensation do you think is appropriate for you as council members to receive for the service that you're providing to the community? I would suspect that, if you did the hour calculation, even with the value of the health insurance and the current council compensation, that it's probably not an unreasonable hourly rate. It's probably not like $500 an hour that you end up getting with the amount of time that you all put in. It's kind of a question of where do you think that balance point is between, compensation for being on the council versus, donation of time, right? And community service. And I think that's probably, you asked Kim a question earlier of, what was the prior council's consideration on this, whenever this would come up in passing, those seem to be the points that the prior council members would talk about, and their choice was to not do the health insurance thing, but that's obviously at the discretion of the council. So.
All right. Thanks for good work there. Taking on that.
Thanks for the non-recommendation. Yeah.
That's all I have.
Thanks, Tony. Jessica, we'll go to Jessica next and then bring it back to Anna. Jessica, do you have any questions?
Thank you. I want to disclose I had a wonderful conversation with Kathleen Egan around this topic. And I want to confirm, and I apologize if I've missed this elsewhere, but it was mentioned that there's some sort of loophole where if a council person does receive health insurance, there is a way for them to continue receiving it even after the point where they're no longer serving on council. Is that, can we either confirm that that's incorrect or inaccurate, or how is there any sort of kind of loophole? Is it you receive it when you're serving, and once you're finished serving, it's completely done? Or is there any sort of way, maybe a question for Andy, is there any sort of way around that where if you choose to receive the health insurance benefit, that there's a potential for receiving it for the long term?
Yes, thank you for that question. As far as I know, the only loophole that comes to my mind is the COBRA coverage that is available to all folks who are terminated from their health plan, and the COBRA costs are borne by the employee, or in this case, the outgoing council member, and generally end after 18 months. I'm making an assumption that that would apply to outgoing council members, and so therefore they would have the opportunity to pay their own monthly premiums in order to receive the COBRA coverage for that period of time. Other than that, I do not believe there's another way
Right. So the state law, Councilmember Abrams, says that council members can't get more than a certain amount of money per month for being on council. There's a compensation cap. And the law that establishes the compensation cap says that health benefits don't count against the cap as long as they're the same benefits that some group of town employees are getting. So the town does not currently, nor do I think the town ever would, pay for health insurance forever for employees. So if the council were receiving that benefit, it wouldn't be something that employees get, so it would count against the compensation cap, and by itself would probably go over the cap.
Yes, and to make that even more complicated, employees are eligible for retiree medical, primarily at their own cost, but because that eligibility hinges on the fact that the employees participate in the retirement system. And that the connection with the retirement system is what allows employees to access the medical after they retire. So I believe I have confirmed with CalPERS that because the council does not participate in the retirement system, they wouldn't have the retirement access to the health insurance other than in the way I described in relation to the COBRA coverage. Was that helpful or more confusing?
No, that does. I think that does help clarify. I just wanted to be 100% that no, there is no kind of loophole or unseen kind of way through that. But
yeah,
no, that's a helpful answer.
Yeah, I mean, we've also communicated, because a lot of the special districts in the region do provide health insurance for their board members, and our communications with those special districts have indicated that once the board member is off the board, they no longer have access to the health insurance. So I think that just further reiterates what Kim said, that I don't think there's a loophole there.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Thanks, Jessica. Anna? No questions. And all of you saw most of my questions in our Q&A that I have been going back and forth with Kim for the past 48 hours to better understand all of these issues as well. So seeing no other questions from council, right? Good. Let's go to public comment. Judy, take it away.
Good evening. This is Frank Bernhard, a citizen and also running for Truckee Town Council. The agenda item 7.1 related to town council health care should be opposed, given the fact that so many people have lost their health care in our community, in our town, and to look further and broader at the issues affecting health care for everyone. I don't believe that it's in the best interest of the town at this time to adopt health care for council members that are serving, obviously, in this elected position. The impact of $90,000 in additional expense is something that we can't consider at this time, given the structural implications of our budget in the forthcoming year in 2021 and beyond. Each council member should have their own health care provided to them outside of their office and based on their employer, and also to available options in the public marketplace. Therefore, I do oppose 7.1 being adopted as of today. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Joan DeReich Jones. I'm calling on item 7.1. Good evening, Mayor Pallavi and fellow council members. I am calling in today to address the issue of the health insurance added to council members' stipend. I want to express my absolute rejection of this idea. I believe that the turnover of council is the best for our community. It brings new blood who can speak to the current issues of our town. New blood and new ideas are important to keep a vibrant community. For this very reason, I believe the addition of health insurance to the council benefit package is a very bad idea. Adding health insurance will create a benefit that is too precious to lose, especially in this very uncertain insurance economy. It creates a benefit that is just too valuable to give up. It is not the right reason anybody should seek or serve in a public office. The other concern I have is the tremendous cost to the town. An additional $90,000 today, and we know how health insurance costs can and have skyrocketed. Plus, with the requirement to add retiree health insurance after only 5 years of service, the ongoing cost to the town will produce an untenable burden. Do you really think this is the year to impose this cost on our community? Something will have to give. I believe the individuals should serve because they want to provide a public service to our community, not for the money or the benefits. Don't make being a council member a financial decision. I implore you to reconsider this benefit. It will not be good for the town, and it will not be good for the council. Thank you for listening. Sincerely, your fellow council member, Joan D. Reich Jones.
Thanks, Joan.
Good evening. My name is Ted Owens, and my comments are as a former town council member and a former mayor of the town of Truckee. They're not reflective of any other affiliations I have in town. I was alarmed to see agenda item 7.1 for this evening's council consideration, data breaking with 27 years of town council tradition, and for the first time, this council proposes to award itself health care benefits. If the original town council back in 1993 had intended additional benefits for council members such as health care to ensure candidate attraction to run for office, they would have done it. They wisely did not. It was a differentiator from other regional elected bodies. And service on the council was and has up until now been a representative honor bestowed by this community, an elevated civic duty, if you will. It has been one of the many differences that service on the town council has stood for. No prior town council has ever sought to aggrandize themselves beyond the wisdom of that first council, and that is why this is so disappointing to me. As a practical matter, timing couldn't be worse. The council faces a, quote, structural problem with the general fund, end quote, as stated in the staff report before you. And yet before you tonight is the addition of at least $90,000 in new spending. Not unnecessary services to the taxpayer, but footed by the taxpayer as a service or benefit to you. Health insurance costs rise, and so too will this expenditure. If you do this, it could be offset by, quote, reducing a full-time staff position, end quote, also stated in the staff report, or by other reductions. The other suggested option of providing council with an $810 stipend to be put toward health insurance costs, when added to the regular stipend you're likely to also increase tonight with agenda item 6.4, would bring the new monthly cost per council member to $1,584 and change, I think. And an annual total cost to the council of over $95,000, and this is the less expensive option. I guess that beats the $136,000 total council cost all in for the year that you're proposing. A little over 4 years ago, the council total cost was $18,000. The stipend was $300 and had been for 23 years, and it was time for a change then, for sure. What is being considered tonight is outrageous, a philosophical departure from past council culture. It stands to greatly alter why people seek to serve this community and thus alter council culture. I sincerely and respectfully urge a nay vote on extending town health care benefits to yourselves. Thank you for your consideration.
That's it.
Thanks, Ted. That's it? Okay, thank you. Closing public comment on, what are we on? 7.1, thank you. Great, so we will bring it back for council deliberation. Is everybody good to keep going? 6:30, we can plow through this, great. Yeah, so let's deliberate on this. As I said, just to at least narrow down the conversation, at least I personally don't have any intention of moving to that $90,000 number. As I said, I'd love to, if we're going to have a conversation about this, if this is even something we're interested in pursuing, I suggest we start at maybe the lower stipend number, and I'm interested to hear what everybody has to say. Vice Mayor Klostad, you want to start? Anyone?
Well, I suppose it's a bit of an duty of me to do so because I will admit that this was my idea that I brought forth at the budget workshop. And I don't know if you remember, but at the very end of our retreat, I rattled through a bunch of things that I had wanted to talk about, and this is one of them. So we didn't get that opportunity. And yeah, it probably would have been better served in that environment, I think. But we are where we are because the budget workshop was the next opportunity to talk about it. And for me, this is not something that's going to benefit me, so I just want to start with that. The purpose of this is not about compensation. It is not about hourly rates. It is not about the time that we spend here and whether or not it's an honor or a duty. It is about trying to create a better opportunity for a more diverse council. That is really where I am coming from on this. In the middle of a pandemic, when so many people are losing their health insurance, I really feel that we need to disengage that connection of health insurance provided by our employers. I think that's the way that we have understood this issue to be for so many years, and it is just not serving us. And right now we're in the midst of an opportunity or a time that connection is showing its weak links, and it's leaving people behind. To me, this is about trying to maybe providing a liberating opportunity to some underemployed or underrepresented and certainly some underinsured members of our community. I think businesses have recognized the benefits for years of why we want to have diverse boards. Having a more diverse board allows that board to be better informed, and they have found to make better decisions, particularly better decisions to serve a greater population of our community. And that's what I'm trying to achieve here. Now, I too have had a nice conversation with Kathleen Egan and a few other people, both candidates and past council members. And I understand the apprehensions and the concerns. I think that we stand a chance at this moment in time, given that 4 out of the 5 council members will not personally benefit from this decision, that this would be an investment in the future councils. And I understand the arguments that we've had in the last 2 elections, the last 2 years, plenty of people vying for a seat on this dais. And I think that is wonderful. But it has not always been the case. And I think also our time up here, particularly in the last 9 months, has been very intensive and made us all realize that we had to personally give up a lot in order to do what we're doing up here. And not everybody in our community has that ability. I can be here because I have an incredibly supportive family. And I think many of us are in that situation. Jessica, I honestly don't know how you continue to do this as a single mom, but kudos to you.
I'll let you know.
So I really see this as an opportunity for us to create possibly greater diversity in the future. That is really my primary focus and goal with this and why I brought it forward. I know there's probably some other ways to do that, and I seek an opportunity to have discussions with community members and staff about other opportunities to create that. But it was a goal of mine to serve up here with a minority group or minority representation, whether that's socioeconomic or racial or gender. I just feel like we need better diversity up here. So those are my thoughts for why I brought this forward, and I really I really want to thank the staff for their research on this. Regardless of where we go from here, now we understand what the playing field looks like, and we understand what other boards have offered their executive directors, and that we can confine it, because I think that is really critical, that this is not a lifetime benefit. And I also think that we would want to, as an attachment to this, or as part of this resolution, if we were to move forward, attach term limits. Because I too share the concern that former Mayor Jones expressed about this becoming the reason to serve. That is also not the intention. And so I would be happy to discuss some other parameters like that we could create in order to make this a more palatable possibility.
Thank you. And to clarify, you're in favor of proceeding, if so, given the choice.
Yes, and for just the council member, not the family plan, because that's all that I had ever really envisioned, and just during the terms of service.
Great. Thank you. If you guys are good, do you mind if we go to Jessica and then come back in? Jessica?
Hi. Yeah. I respect and appreciate where you're coming from, Anna, but I have to disagree. I think that it has always been the case that there are plenty of candidates. In 26 years, there was one election cycle where there were 2 candidates for 2 open seats when David Chairman and I were appointed to our seats. Other than that, we haven't had a shortage of potential candidates. I understand wanting to support more diversity and to help encourage the underemployed, underrepresented, underinsured members of our community. But I think there can be a different creative method to help support that in becoming elected. And I didn't have to go through this, but as far as I'm aware, the rest of you have, it takes money to get elected. So even if we offer health insurance to just the council member, if you're seeking more diversity and more diversity from socioeconomic groups that are maybe underemployed, underrepresented, and underinsured, where are they going to find the financial backing to even get themselves into the council member position? And then only having the council member be covered, well, then someone like me, if I didn't have an employer who pays my health insurance or helps to sponsor part of that coverage, well, it wouldn't make a difference because I have children who need health insurance and I don't have anyone else, in my household that can provide it. So it's still excluding those people that were maybe wanting to focus on including more. What is highly concerning to me is really also reflective of what we've heard from public comments and my own career, where I work with people on a regular basis. I do comprehensive financial planning, and I will meet with people who say, I want to retire early. I want to retire at age 50 or 55. And the first thought in my mind, how are we going to pay for your health insurance? That is the number one biggest expense that we can expect you're going to have to take on and cover up until you reach age 65 and qualify for Medicare. And so knowing that this is such a tremendous expense, it's such a carrot for people to chase, that even if someone doesn't pursue participating and serving on council out of their own internal motivation to participate in the community and help maintain this amazing place where we live, even just the perception, having the perception be there as a possibility that it may have an impact on the motivation. We aren't a community of career politicians. We aren't a community of people who are really looking to serve for any reason other than the fact that they have passion for Truckee and want to participate in the overall success of our community. And I have a huge amount of heartburn that doing something like adding in health insurance benefits is going to change, if not the actual motivation of people running, the whole perception of it. And so I am heartfelt, strongly opposed to including health insurance for council members.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Commendatore.
Where to start? I mean, it can be very succinct, but I'll expand on that. I think this is a bad idea. I don't think it's the right thing to do at all. I think it's a departure from the purpose of what we're doing. I don't think anybody is up here for a benefit such as that. We're all up here because we wanted to give our time. We wanted to do what we can to help the town that we love. I had thought about running for town council about 22 years ago, and I had a town council member at the time advise me, the best thing to do right now is raise your family, work on your business, get yourself into a good spot, learn from life as you go through that, and you'll be able to be a better, more credible candidate. And in this case, I was appointed, so I skipped that part and went straight to being a town council member, and hopefully I can add and be more beneficial to the overall conversation and bring a point of view and some thoughts that I think hopefully make all of us better, not just my own personal beliefs, but all of us by contributing to the bigger discussion. I took that, and I really do believe that that's a part of it. And so, yeah, it is a little bit, you're absolutely correct, and I hear what you're saying on it is, your points are well taken, and there are always going to be people who we want to find ways to include them, but there are also things about this, and I think Ted kind of said it, which I didn't really ever think about before, but until he said it, was that this is the group that leads the town. This is the town council. And with all due respect to all the other districts out there, because they're all very important, all those boards are very important, they're not representing the overall town the same way this group does. And elevating that to a level is okay. And having it at a higher, having that higher bar is okay, and the expectation is okay. That's fine. In this country, we have an age limit to be president of the United States. If anyone could be it, then we should just lower it or remove it and say whoever wants to be president. But we have those things in place, or how our culture, how our governments are formed to try and bring in the right people. So the long and short of it is still the same. I am opposed to this completely. I think it does change what we're trying to do. We are not looking to add additional costs to the budget, particularly in COVID era. If we're going to have to reduce something, I ask anyone on this dais to say, not what, who are we going to remove? Who are we going to ask leave their job in order to create $100,000 worth of additional budget? That's what it kind of comes down to. That's how I do in my business. When I have a cost and someone puts on me, I start thinking about, okay, how do I increase my revenue, or what do I need to cut? And usually, labor is the most expensive thing for any organization, and that's where you have to go first. So, and I don't want to do that to anyone, because everyone in this town and this organization has worked their butts off to get us through COVID, and a few little things along the way, bringing on a new town manager, And now we're working on a new police chief, and they are putting their sweat and their sweat and tears into this to make this town keep on ticking in a very difficult time. So to me, that's off the table. We can't be removing anybody. My time is short here. I'm going to fight for the last few rounds I got to save everyone on in the town and their roles. I have a few more things to say, but I think that gets the gist of where I'm at on this.
Thank you. Mr. Tierman.
Okay, I spent the last several days trying to remember or refresh my memory on why this item was in front of us, and was reminded that it came up in the budget workshop, and then I went back and found the video, and Anna, I saw you're raising this issue, and then it all kind of came back. So had not really considered this as a pressing item for our town community, and was actually surprised, when that was raised, and hadn't really thought about it. But since then, and certainly since this has become an agenda item, have given it considerable thought. And for me, I look at it kind of through the lens of three considerations. Number one, philosophy, which has been mentioned a lot tonight. Number two, cost impacts. And number three, timing, considerations of timing. Is this the right time to even be thinking about something like this? And I do appreciate, your very detailed explanation of what your thinking was to bring this up. I think there are a lot of noble, worthy ideas in your thinking there. So going with philosophy first, I think from my perspective, we are all here to serve the community. We're public servants. I don't think any of us are up here because of a stipend or a salary or any other benefit. I think we're doing this out of love for our community. And I think that's sort of an underlying important notion and thing to consider. Is it the right thing to do? Is it in the best interest of Truckee? Yeah, I struggle with that one. I'm not so sure it is in the best interest of the community to further enrich the benefits to the council in this sort of way. It's sort of a sad, in a way, a sad statement about the state of healthcare in our nation when we even have to think about running for office to avail of healthcare, and that's a whole nother discussion. I'm concerned about the cost impacts. We're continuing to go through a public health crisis that has had some significant impacts on our physical health, and we're not out of the woods yet. I think we've got to keep an eye on our budget going forward and kind of tighten the belt and make sure that we can get through this period of crisis. And then the timing considerations. I have to agree with the comments from Mr. Bernhard. I don't know Mr. Bernhard, but when I read his public comments, I think he put a frame around where I've ended up in my thinking on this. People have lost jobs. People have lost their insurance. And I think considering something like this during a time of crisis and awarding a future council with health benefits just doesn't feel right. So all those things said, I would be opposed to moving this any further.
Thank you. And it sounds like we have some direction here, but I'm going to say my comments anyway, so I apologize ahead of time for that. It's hard to keep me quiet. And since I'm here, I might as well say what I came to say. So I agree with every single one of us. I mean, nobody's up here for the pay. If we were up here for the pay, we would have left a long time ago. And a stipend of any amount in addition is wonderful, and we value it and we appreciate it. But again, it doesn't equate to what we do in our daily lives. It doesn't put any food on the table. And a health insurance stipend for what I was going to propose also, I don't think would markedly change that dynamic. To be clear, what I was going to propose was something in the line of a $600 a month stipend for all 5 council members for 12 months out of the year. And if all 5 council members decided to take that, that would be $36,000 a year. And that's it, flat, no additional fees or nothing after retirement. And just to remind us all, we just approved a contingency budget in item 6.1 without even talking about it in the amount of $15,000 per year. So just to put it into relative terms of our overall budgeting process, to me, it's a small price to pay for the experience, for the intellectual diversity, for the demographic diversity that might help bring somebody else and a fresh voice to this dais. As I was reflecting on this, I was looking at every picture in this room, and for those who are tuning in from home, we have a picture, there's framed pictures of all the past councils, and there's a common theme. And that common theme is a little bit to what Vice Mayor Klostad was referring to, similar age ranges, similar colors of skin, similar persuasions, and similar economic backgrounds. And to me, that's not representative of our community. And, to Councilmember Commendatori's comment, it struck me so hard because somebody very close to me has always said, public service is for when you're retired. It's not for any other point in your life because you can't afford to do it at any other point in your life when you're raising kids or building your business or trying to put food on the table or, finding out with health insurance program you're going to be on in the coming year. And my personal story is I've been on 3 different plans in the past 3 years and went 6 months with only emergency coverage with a $5,000 deductible. And I'm a business owner and I can't afford to offer any type of health insurance to my employees at this point because again, we're trying to get by. But this isn't about me, and that's really what I think Vice Mayor Klostad was getting at, was this is about bringing a change in that mentality of that public service is only for the retired, or only for those of us with flexibility, or only for those of us who dictate our own schedules. 2 of us own our own businesses. So, we have that flexibility, and it's not representative, in my opinion, of even 95% of the people that we claim to represent on a daily basis. So, to me, that's really important, and that's why I was in favor of pursuing this. But that's not where we're going to go tonight. To some of the comments we received, what's changed since 1993? A lot. And most importantly, the healthcare system has changed, and the access to reliable, dependable healthcare that actually can be referred to as healthcare. A $5,000 emergency deductible with 0 other coverage, that's not healthcare. That helps you when you get helicoptered out somewhere and you're done already. So, to somebody who has it, it's great. And it's a huge benefit. And sometimes when I'm up here and we're introducing different staff and we're approving different contracts and we're looking at budgets, there is a feeling of, wow, these people are really well taken care of. But we're in charge of it. And so to me, that's just it's sort of I always reflect on it, and it always sort of gives me this feeling of like, okay, great. I guess nobody values the value that is placed on the higher end decision making that makes all of those individual smaller decisions happen is actually significantly less than the value that we actually put on the people doing the work. And it's not a matter of sitting here because you get something. I think the passion to do this type of work, if you really just want to sit up here for 4 or 5 hours a week and go to 2-day budget sessions and go through all of the various meetings and other things that we get to go through, file your conflicts of interest and your fiduciary this and that and every other report that we have to file, that's your choice, right? And we're not here to dictate that, but I'm not sure people are going to make that choice just to get a $600 health insurance stipend. Maybe I'll be wrong about that, and we won't have that chance to see. But had we gone down this road, I very much would have favored term limits to offset some of those discussions that have been placed around, somebody just sitting here for 4 years. And I think it's also important to look at the past and look at some of the terms that we've been lucky enough to have people serve. Mayor Wallace D, 3 terms. I mean, that's incredible service regardless of the compensation. So I don't buy the argument that compensation drives longevity. I buy the argument that passion and desire to do the job is what puts you here. And if you don't want to be here, you're not going to go through a campaign to raise $10,000. You're not going to go through all the other paperwork to do it. So, that's just where I'm coming from and how I look at it. And I think that it's important that we all do have that different lens and philosophy, because that's what makes us unique. Although not unique enough, in my opinion, to represent the true diversity that we have out in our community. I had a lot more notes, but I'm going to leave it at that because I think that gets the point that I was looking to make. So if there's no other comments, I did want to, I'll put it out there, that $36,000 a year. I can find, and I'm sorry, Dan, but I could find 6 CIP projects to pull $6,000 out of in pretty much 5 minutes if you would like me to do that. But I don't see that as the direction that we're going tonight. So unless there's any other comments, we will put this to bed and move on.
Well, I also have a couple of comments. I mean, I was trying to be very respectful, and I realized that obviously it struck a chord with you. And, I think all 5 of our opinions matter up here. And I do believe that I would venture a guess that everyone who's moved up here, and particularly on the dais who's been here at some length of time, came here because they liked this town and where it was going and how things have gone along. So to say that we didn't make major changes because something's just not right isn't necessarily fair either. We've had a pretty good representation. Those people up there forged a path and did a pretty damn good job. Are they perfect? No. Can we do better? Sure. We always can do better. Do things change? Absolutely. Always things change. But I would say that we're in a pretty good spot because of those people up there. We're fiscally healthy because of those people and the people in this room. We're not in a position that many towns and cities are in where they're trying to tighten their belt completely, lay people off because of COVID, do different things because there was being irresponsible. The reason why, at the end of the day, all of this is even possible and we're in a good spot is because people have been responsible. And so I don't want to just blow that off as if it's like this major change needs to happen. I'd also say that those people on the wall probably more or less represented the majority of the people at the time. Has our demographics changed? Yes. Do we have a more diverse group? Yes. Will over time this group continue to change on the 5 chairs here? Yes. That's going to happen no matter what. So I think we're in a pretty good spot, and it's not to say I don't want change. I think we all can point to a major problem going on in a place called Washington, D.C., where they are heavily compensated for their jobs. And I don't really care if people say that they're just raising their hand because they want to do the best for it. It's a pretty darn good job that they get pretty damn good benefits for the rest of their lives. And they're there, and we have a lot of problems going on no matter what side of the aisle you're on.
this is local government and needs to stay small and needs to have good turnover and needs to have people have the passion to be here for the betterment of their community, period. And I agree that you're probably right. In itself would not totally make someone raise their hand and say, I want to do that job because I get $600 a month for my insurance or something like that. I agree. You're right. Probably wouldn't change it drastically, but little bits at a time. It's a slippery slope. What's the next thing? What's the next thing? And what's the next thing? And that's my biggest concern is the path we'd go. So anyways, I'll leave it at that.
Any other comments? You have your direction. We will not be proceeding. We will move on to item 7.2. Thank you.
Okay.
Let's do 7.2 because it's going to be like 2 minutes, and then we'll take a break because you're out of here for closed session anyway.
I have another one of these very long and complicated staff presentations. So in a closed session, the council instructed me to prepare this item, and that this item pertains to awarding our Public Works Director, Town Engineer, acting pay for the period of time that he was our acting town manager, which was from July 8th, 2020 to October 25th, 2020. Should you choose to do this, you need to read out this motion, including the compensation amount. It is equivalent to 10%, as you all instructed.
Thank you. Any questions? Any public comment? No? Okay. Seeing none. Would anybody like to make a motion? And if so, please read in full as we were instructed.
The council award an additional compensation amount of $5,615.42 to Dan Wilkins in recognition of his service as acting town manager for the period of July 8, 2020 through October 25th, 2020.
I'll second that.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, item 7.2 passes. Thank you for your service during that time, Dan. We really appreciate it. And your one-word answer tonight was just shocking. I haven't heard a one-word answer from you in a long time. So thank you for all of your service over the past few months.
Thanks.
Teed you up for that one. Turn my mic off. Before we head into closed session, let's go through any council member reports. Anybody particularly want to start? Mr. Tierman, are you Councilmember Tierman?
Sure.
You good?
Sure. October 15th, participated in our council public health update, COVID update. The next day, the Mountain Housing Council held their quarterly meeting. Myself, along with Yumi and Shauna Doherty, partook in that. And then GPAC, General Plan Advisory Committee, met on the 22nd of October. Good turnout. A lot of continue to be good public participation as well. I think there were, 20 some odd, 40. I can't remember what the number was, but it was an impressive number. So the community continues to be engaged, even with the difficulty of doing everything through video link. And that's my report.
Jessica?
Yeah, I participated in the Truckee River Day weekend and brought my two kids who are now 6 and 8. My daughter just turned 8 on Saturday. So they were 6 and 7 at the time. We do Truckee River Day every single year since they were toddlers. And so we went and got our t-shirts and our masks and our maps and went to Prosser Creek, where we ended up staying for a couple of hours. It was a beautiful day. The creek was absolutely gorgeous. There were crawdads and dragonflies and fish jumping. And we just really talked about how grateful we were to have such a beautiful place to live in and have such a gorgeous day. So that was my my kind of extracurricular council and mom activity over the past couple weeks.
Thank you, Jessica. Councilmember Commendatore.
I know I participated in the COVID update 2 weeks ago, but I think I took last week off, and I have not been thinking about town council at all until I came back to our agenda. So I was out of town enjoying myself with no cell phone range, no internet in the mountains of the Central Valley.
Vice Mayor Klostad.
Yeah, I enjoyed the GPAC meeting as well. It was really well attended, and I would say an enthusiastic group wanting to meet in December and keep it going. So that was awesome. Did a brief visit for Truckee River Day back to the willows that we've been planting over the years, which was lovely. It was a gorgeous day. And then the only other thing was I watched, there was a seminar on Friday about California wildfires and building in the wildland-urban interface. So I rewatched it over the weekend, found it really interesting, shared it with Danielle and staff. So hopefully we will all get a little bit more information to start building our basis of knowledge for the general plan update and how to have a town coexist in the WUI.
Great. I participated in the mayor manager's breakfast last week. I think it was last week now, and that was great. It's a combination of all the mayors and town managers along with some county folk, and we primarily talked about what we're all going to do in the winter and what everybody's downtowns are looking like, and they're excited to welcome Jen to our next one next month, which will be the last one for a number of us mayors, actually. So Lisa Swarthout, if anybody knows her from down in Grass Valley, she's not rerunning and has been a long time elected official down there. So just passing that information along if any of you know her. She's been a great rock in those meetings for sure. We also, Dan and I did the county call last Friday, which was also good. And pretty much all we are talking about is what we're all doing with our business districts at the end of the day. So those seem to be the themes for those calls lately. But that was pretty informative and an opportunity for the county to continue that relationship and actually ask us a bunch of questions about what we were looking at and what we needed and things like that. So that was good. We did the Veterans Day filming. It was filmed ahead of time, but it will be aired on Veterans Day. So make sure that you tune in. Gary Seeger was our guest speaker. It was a pleasure to meet him, and a big thanks to Rory and Judy and everybody who helped put that together. A wonderful mayoral responsibility, I think, that we have continued that tradition, and I actually learned quite a bit in that speech that I gave. So thank you to Judy for that. I've been participating as a participant, but I was also a panel speaker in what's called California Recreate Responsibly Coalition. This came out of the outdoor industry, but is morphed into a statewide coalition of land managers and other folks from all sorts of private entities and public entities up and down the state about statewide messaging sort of regarding this whole pandemic and the influx of folks outside dealing with litter, dealing with trailhead infrastructure, things like that, and talking about what the winter holds. And I think Dan's been having some good conversations, and we'll get some updates on that soon about some additional possibilities that we're working with Forest Service and state parks potentially on to help out some of our recreation infrastructure as we move into the winter. I got a tour of the proposed, or of the envisioned Truckee River Water Park, which is a visionary project that they're trying to co-locate with the Truckee Springs acquisition, and maybe brought them back to reality a little bit and really said, you really need to go talk to our Public Works Department. So I don't know if they've reached out to you at this point, but said that'd be their next step if they are really looking to put something in there as Truckee Springs develops. But it would be a really cool, their vision is great, and obviously just money and other things get in the way sometimes. And then lastly, we will stop using the word TBID. and we will now be using the phrase Visit Truckee Tahoe, or VTT. So if you hear me referring to either, it's because I haven't quite made the transition yet. But VTT, which is the new T-bid, which is their own entity, private 501c6, of which we have an actual voting board seat. We had our first full meeting of the board this past week. Talked a little bit about budgets and other things, and the plan for Qs 3 and 4, 2, 3, and 2.5, I guess, 3 and 4. And we'll be getting back together this week, and then a number of additional meetings as that group sort of coalesces and forms, and I believe they'll be coming with a annual report of some sort at our December 20th, whatever our second meeting in December is, whatever date that is. That's when they will be bringing us back their report on their new structure since their last creation, I guess. They just got created by us a few weeks ago. That was it. With that, we are adjourned to closed session, and our next regular town council meeting will be November 10th at 5 p.m. right here. Thank you very much, everybody, and we are adjourned.
There will be no item 9.2. Only one closed session item. The second one is not happening.
Even better. Great. Thank you, Andy, and we are now adjourned. Thank you.